I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us join today in prayer, and first I'll read a bit of scripture from Psalm 31:24. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart, all you who hope in the Lord. So, Father, as we come to you today, we put our trust in you. We just ask that you continue to bless this county, continue to bless our citizens, and today as we conduct the business of the county, we'd ask for your continued blessings with each of us and our decisions. And Father, as we come to you this morning, we want to especially thank you for the rain last night, give you thanks for the continuing good, prosperous opportunity for crops. And with all of that, Father, we give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Dave. We have strictly a budget meeting today, so if we can get a motion for the agenda, we'll proceed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion has carried. So let's just get right on into it. District Court. You guys will come forward, please.
You want them standing or sitting?
However they choose. Good morning, Curtis. Doesn't give you much room, does it?
That's a low budget, Curtis, so duct tape.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Curtis Jacobs on behalf of the Finney County District Court and 25th Judicial District. Also with me today is Chief Judge Robert Frederick, seated in the front row. We appreciate your time this morning. I'm going to try to keep my comments brief. We submitted our budget under the instructions provided us by County Administrator Robert Reese, and our overall budget request was $1,369,550. That is different from what's being shown in the information in the agenda. And Ms. Beavers explained that there was some math recalculation when this was calculated into the form that y'all use. I'm not sure where the extra $100,000 went, but I'm sure we can figure that out. That is an increase of approximately $241,000 over our FY20 request. $200,000 of that 241 is accounted for by a capital project that was not included in last year's budget request. We have a $27,000 increase in expected expenditures for contractuals, specifically for indigent defense, interpreters, and jury trials. And we have about $20,000 that was added in for licensure that we're going to need to continue for telework equipment. These are licenses for various softwares that we will use to conduct hearings remotely, to record those remote hearings, and so on. Breaking the budget down, 25th District and Finney County District Court does not request any money for personnel. All of our personnel expenditures are paid by the state of Kansas. We have approximately 30 people work out of the Finney County Courthouse and the Court Services or Community Services Center building. Of those, 4 are district judges, 1 is magistrate, and the rest are either supervisors or line staff. Our commodities budget for 21, our request went up $8,500. Various number changes there, not worth noting really. Contractuals, the budget went up by about $27,000 as mentioned before. $11,000 of this is accounted for by the contract that the county signed with the indigent defense. They get a 2% increase built in every year, and that's calculated to $11,000 in this contract period, and about $15,000 of increase to meet the changing needs of our interpreter services for court hearings. In the capital, the increase is $205,000 total. We believe that that money should be spent for courtroom 200, what we are calling the renovated conference rooms on the second floor, and for doing the courtroom 201 renovations, improvements to security, and carpet and paint work on the fourth floor that was canceled this year. So that's all included in our budget request as well. On a same document, but separate in the district expense line, the overall budget for the 25th Judicial District goes down by $15,300. Gentlemen, our budget includes some things that we point out each year we would like to have you reconsider. Primary among them is the Indigent Defense Fund. This year, that amount is $613,750. This is not a contract that the court signs with these lawyers, nor should we, for ethical reasons. However, this $613,000 lands in our budget every year, I think more out of convenience to the county. I point out to you each year that the judges and I believe that this presents an ethical concern. We appoint these attorneys and then we turn around and pay them. However, the budget money is under the control of the county administrator's office, but it's in my budget. And there's conflict there, and we'd like to see it resolved. This is probably the 7th or 8th time you've heard me say that. I say it every year. We have some concerns about how our capital is being managed, and we have requested the opportunity to have a courthouse renovation put into some bond money. We understand the county is considering a bond possibly for construction of a new building in 22, and we've requested to be part of that conversation. Most recently, there's been a great deal of conversation about whether or not to keep the law enforcement center basement courtroom open. I believe we've made the argument with the county administrator that there's efficiencies to be gained both monetarily and operationally to have that courtroom moved to the building, to the courthouse building, and situated in the converted conference rooms, which we would then call courtroom 200. That's my remarks, gentlemen. I think Judge Frederick and I will be happy to stand for any questions.
Gentlemen?
The line number on the Indigent Defense Fund, is it, this is Dr. Clifford, is it 5410?
I honestly couldn't tell you, Dr. Clifford, due to our reliance this year on the state's budget form. The budget numbers that were presented to you in your format were prepared by the county administrator's office and the budget officer. I can't say, I'm sorry.
I see the conflict panels on 5408. Just wondering if 5410 attorney fees general, is that the one we're talking
I
about?
believe if you added two of those together.
That's why the number was different, 600 something thousand.
Yes.
Okay, we're adding those two.
You should have 5 lines total involved in the indigent defense. Dr. Clifford, you should have the what we call the stipend or per diem, the monthly amount, then the conflict panel. There's money for general reimbursement. There's money for care and treatment cases that we hire Pawnee County attorneys to handle. And then there's $7,500 in a separate line. I don't know what the line numbers are, sir, but that's where I get the $613,750.
Yeah, it's 5408. Okay, thank you.
Curtis, you made the comment during your opening about doing more online IT distance courtroom. Explain to me why we need another courtroom if we're going to do all this.
May I?
That'd be fine,
Sir.
Judge.
We've come to you before and talked about doing this, and you guys have said thank you, but no thank you, and we understand that. But now we've reached a predicament that we don't think we can solve efficiently by doing anything other than turning those 2 rooms in the courthouse into a courtroom. And here's the reason why. The courtroom in the basement of the law enforcement center is an island from a technological standpoint. It cannot be upgraded like the rest of the courthouse can be upgraded every 5 years. It's standalone. And so when you improve your system, your IT system, you have to create an IT system for that room, just that room. The best guesstimate is that that number is going to be somewhere between $55,000 and $65,000 to make it able to become a part of the rest of our network. The problem we have is that if that was a one-time expense, that'd be worth looking at. But it's not a one-time expense. Because it's an island, every time Finney County decides to improve or alter its equipment with regard to IT, that room has to be rebuilt. So the anticipated cost, I think this is being done about every 5 to 6 years, is that Finney County is going to spend on that one room $55,000 to $65,000 every 5 years. We will have, in 5 years, paid for what I believe is most, if not all, of the cost of remodeling what we refer to as 200. And then we don't have to deal with this $55,000 to $65,000 every 5 years. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. And a follow-up question. I remember when we first remodeled and developed that courtroom over there, so it was convenient for the sheriff to bring prisoners down for their court appearances. They no longer do that, or are they all on video?
They do it to some degree. That is Judge Pierce's assigned courtroom. And so depending upon the nature of the hearing, they may or may not be bringing people down for a particular proceeding. He's done some jury trials over there. Obviously, they would be down for that. Preliminary hearings, they would be down for that. Arraignments, they probably would be down for that. Sentencings, they probably would be down for that. And they would probably also be down for pretrials. But against this, you need to understand the backdrop that we are dealing with as it relates to the Office of Judicial Administration in the Kansas Supreme Court in Topeka. We're getting huge pressure. I mean huge pressure to do teleworking and to do as much Zoom as we can possibly get away with. And that's why you're seeing these requests for things like that, but it's not an empty push by them. They have, as recently as about 2 weeks ago, committed to give us about $75,000 worth of equipment to make us able to telework. But that's clearly the wave of the future, is to do as much as we can, either remotely or by Zoom. And it, quite frankly, has the effect of making us a kinder, friendlier court. And let me tell you why. People come to Garden City for court. They may have to travel. I had a guy last week who scheduled an expungement hearing. He lives in California. He would have to travel 1,500 miles to make that hearing, which will not last more than 15 minutes. I told him that we could do that by Zoom. So he can do that in the comfort of his own living room or at his place of employment or wherever he is. It's going to be huge for people all across the country and locally to be able to join hearings in that fashion. And that's the direction we're headed. And this courtroom is going to be much more of a technological center than a courtroom in the traditional sense. There's not going to be a jury box in it. It's going to be for bench trials and motion hearings and that sort of thing.
I guess, back to my original question, you stated that that courtroom for some reason is an island. It can't be updated like the rest of them. I guess that would be a question for the IT people, why that happens.
Well, it happened because the sheriff's department and Finney County are not on the same systems. And because they're not on the same systems, they're not compatible with one another. Did I describe that correctly?
Yes, sir, if I may. Commissioner Jones, the issue is that probably 2 to 3 years ago, Finney County Sheriff and Finney County IT took two different paths with the software and hardware that they bought. They didn't agree on what was the right equipment and use and so on. Certainly that's their purview. It has nothing to do with us. But the net effect was that we are trapped now in a building that has no Finney County IT support. Okay, the equipment that we're running on.
Now you're speaking about the LEC.
Yes, sir, the LEC courtroom. Okay, that courtroom and the judge's office on the hall right behind it are basically secluded from a technological point of view. Everything that goes on in that courtroom has to go on through a VPN right now because there is no direct connection. Virtual private network. It has to be done by virtual because there is no Finney County IT in that building at all, with the exception of our one courtroom and our one office. Okay, so we're running everything through a server that the sheriff put up so that we could continue to operate in there. When Finney County IT makes a switch next year of our courthouse building to, I believe it's called the RAGE system or software or something, I'm sure that's an acronym, outside my skill set, they will no longer be able to allow us to run a VPN from one building to the other. So they either have to duplicate all of the switch gear and the router and the server for that one courtroom and office, or we need to take that one courtroom and office out of that building and put it where the switch gear, the router, and the servers already are. Okay, so it is in essence stranded on an island, and right now we've built a bridge, but that bridge is not sustainable after the first of the year. As to your original point with the remote hearings, judges and lawyers are currently trying to sort out these new rules, but my understand I don't have a law degree, is that sometimes a defendant is guaranteed the right to appear in person. Okay, they can waive that right, but until those issues get sorted out by the Kansas Supreme Court as to when they have to waive and when they don't, we still have to provide a place if that defendant refuses to do things by video, where they can come to the courthouse and have their day in court, both literally and metaphorically. Further, our courtroom recording software is all resident on the PCs that are in the courtroom. So even if we didn't have a defendant needing to be in the room because he refused to waive his rights, we still have to have a courtroom to put the software in to have the judge sit in to run the meeting. It's complicated, and I don't mean to make it sound that way, but there's a variety of reasons. And my final answer to your point is, I'm not asking for another courtroom. I'm asking to move that one to a different location where it's no longer hanging on by this one VPN line that we're trying to run everything off of.
Well, I know several years ago when Judge Worst was the chief judge, the state had started to push for distance remote work with the courts.
Correct.
So we've been in this method for a long time, or it seems like a long time. One more question, and I'll throw it back to the commissioner. Aren't you to receive some funds from the COVID fund response back to the court systems for all the expenses you incurred on this, or?
At the state level, that's happening, sir, but
Well, they distributed it out to any of the districts.
the push down that we've received from OJA is that we're to ask the county for COVID money. Okay, we are not receiving anything from the state. They've given us, I believe it was 68,000 and change worth of equipment so that we could telework our employees and purchase some of the software it takes to do that. But we're not receiving any direct support in reimbursement or anything for the monies that we've already spent or the money that we anticipate spending going forward, dealing with the pandemic.
Okay, thanks, thank you.
Dave?
This is Dave. A question, Judge, Your Honor, about, I don't know, 6-7 months ago, I believe, we received a document from Curtis on capital improvement requests, and it was kind of a 3-year roadmap. That was helpful, but I'm going to ask, can we ask you for a little clearer roadmap of where the court sees the future of, particularly of that building, the courthouse? If you get courtroom 200 or 201 and get it equipped as you're requesting, then what else is on the scene that we need to look forward to for a significant request in the future?
I would like to think we're there for the foreseeable future.
We have,
And teleworking are the two things we're having to contend with currently. I don't know what the sense is with regard to other Fenian County employees, but those who work for us in the 25th Judicial District-wide, 6 counties, absolutely abhor the idea of being forced to work from home. And so we don't know what that's going to ultimately look like or how long it's going to last. And whether or not it's going to continue to be a part of the mix past the pandemic issues that we currently have. The best I can do is tell you that we really don't know with any degree of certainty where we're headed prospectively. We're just kind of feeling our way along like everybody else. But the 3-year plan that you got was largely centered around trying to make that building more user-friendly, more secure with regard to the people who work there, and something that this community can be proud of.
well, it's a beautiful old building. I think we all agree with that. But on the commission side, we've spent considerable funds on that building over at least my tenure on the commission. And in fact, we're still making installment payments on a heating, air conditioning system and lights and all of that. So my question centers around, is there going to come a point when we say enough's enough and we kind of have that building and its technology up to speed and we don't need anything additional for a little while? So
We hope so.
okay, I appreciate that.
But I
Thank you.
will tell you that this courtroom is urgent. If we lose the courtroom in the basement of the law enforcement center, we're going to have some real logistical problems within the existing building. Because I don't know whether you guys have ever been in this suite. We use it for a courtroom now, and it's a train wreck for that purpose. But we have nonetheless used it religiously. Every day it gets used for anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, depending upon the day.
If we can stand a little levity, I watch Gunsmoke once in a while, and they just clear the whiskey bottles off of the bar and set up court. So, things can be worked out. Anyway,
That's
thank
what
you,
we've
Judge.
been doing.
Thank you.
To your point, Commissioner Jones, if I may, we did provide a 5-year capital plan back in February or March of this year. And it does lay out what I would say the master plan for the county courthouse. And the culmination of that is the bond issuance that we recommended for fiscal 22, if that's when the county decides to move forward with the new health department and EMS building.
Well, you're offering information that I don't know about. I didn't know we were building a new health building, so thank you.
All right, fair enough. If you read the document, sir, I think it lays out the things that we're concerned about. We went to some great pain to get architect drawings, to get plans and costs. I think it's laid out pretty clearly. And were those things accomplished, I agree with Judge Frederick, we could stand confidently and say the building's in a really good place for probably the next 10 or 15 years after that, absent some maintenance and some paint here and there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
To get the other side, let's continue this conversation. I see our IT person is here. Would you care to comment on either side of this discussion?
From the IT perspective, it'll be more costly long-term to maintain the courtroom in the LEC center due to the duplication of network services than what it would be to move that courtroom somewhere else. Whether that means I agree with one side or not, it is kind of up to you guys. More costly from an IT perspective is a drop in the bucket compared to what the remodel is. So long-term, yes, it will be more costly to maintain IT in the LEC courtroom for the IT infrastructure.
Okay, that's what I appreciate that comment. Steve's office is over there as well. How do you deal with his?
It's a small office with minimal connectivity. We could run them off a hotspot and they wouldn't know the difference. Wherever we put them, we can make them work minimum.
I appreciate that. That's beneficial information to us.
One final observation for what it's worth category, the numbers that you've got with regard to doing that courtroom, I believe, are worst case scenario by a long way. I think they're high to begin with. Architects tend to generally do that. But even more importantly, we have another resource upon which we can draw that we think we will get some help. The Finney County Law Library has a significant amount of money. They have historically helped us with other projects within that building. And they have given some indication that they would be willing to help us with this.
Okay, thank you. This has been a topic for several years, just like you agreed, like you mentioned earlier, so.
One more question, this will be for the IT. Judge Frederick stated that you only have about a year's time before you can't do this as a remote location. Explain why.
The LEC, when the sheriff's office separated their environment from the Finney County network, that courtroom was plugged into their building, their network, but it was all part of the Finney County network. They're separate now, and we've put some things in place to kind of bridge that gap. Moving forward, that's what I'm saying, the long-term cost to upgrade those temporary fixes and make them permanent would be substantial to keep them in that building. Whereas if that courtroom was in a building that was already on the county network, we wouldn't have to buy any of that duplicate equipment. That equipment that's made the temporary fixes is old and outdated and already end of life. We've got to purchase new equipment to maintain that LEC courtroom, or we just put that LEC courtroom somewhere that's on our network already. Like we put it here and it would be more cost effective than putting it back in the LEC building.
Commissioner Jones, I'm not sure we've got a year. I'm thinking that we've got more like 6 to 7 months, best case scenario.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your time.
Mr. Chairman, I would,
First of all the questions that I was gonna ask, Larry beat me to the punch, so he must have read my list sometime, Mr. Chairman. But I also wanted to just say, I appreciate the comment you made with regard to the people working within the district as far as home versus being in their offices. I appreciated that comment too, because I think many people are wrestling with that same question.
We are. We have that.
Dave?
this is Dave, I'll offer a motion to take the 25th Judicial District Budget request under advisement.
This is Lon, I would second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all
Thank
for
you,
your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it very
Thank
much,
you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Sheriff,
You want me by myself or you want my partner with me?
well, you can bring your partner with you.
Okay.
How you both gonna stand up there at the same time? I don't know.
So,
Before you get into that, any comments on our last discussion from the sheriff's point of view?
On the
On the-
courtroom.
Yes.
We have had a recent meeting for clarification purposes on that, because I think there were rumors circulating from all sides. And so I just decided to gather all of the parties together. So we had Judge Frederick and Curtis, Doug, and my IT person, and we all got together to discuss what the future issues might be as far as computer services for that courtroom. Also what the future use of that courtroom might be. And I think that we all came to an agreement that the consideration of whether the district court would remain in that courtroom was going to be a county commission decision, because there was going to be some costs incurred to upgrade on the county's part computer software services. And so that's the bottom line. I think that the district court's position is that they would rather have that courtroom over at their building. It makes a lot more sense. As far as the sheriff's office is concerned, the courtroom at the LEC has become not necessary for the use that was originally intended to be used. Before technology got involved, it was very beneficial to us for first and second appearances to bring, and misdemeanors and traffic and all that stuff, to bring prisoners straight down from the jail. But that courtroom's no longer being used for that purpose because of technology. And at our meeting, I think it was suggested that that courtroom is only used a couple hours a week, where it used to be used on a daily basis all day. And so I agree with them. It certainly makes sense to have all of their courtroom hearings in one building, as opposed to having a courtroom that's not being used anymore, that's going to require some.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So
I will point out that the budget items not being mentioned is to reconvert that into what you're gonna use it for.
well, and of course, and it may not cost much at all, because per the city and county agreement, whatever is county stays county, whatever is city stays city. So the municipal court has bought them a new building and with their evidence, and they're vacating, but they're planning on using that municipal court for the police department. And what we would then do is, if that vacated that, we would just use it as a training room. So there may not be much of an upgrade for us to do it. It's just a bigger room that we can conduct training in that we currently don't have a room. We have to utilize the police department or other locations to have a sizable enough place for that. So right now, I don't have, should that happen, and we assume that space, I don't have any.
Okay, super.
Yeah, at this time. So, but
Well, there you
hopefully,
go, at this time.
any future costs of that, we can perhaps pay for that and pay for those potential costs with revenues that we have generated within both of our departments over the years.
Okay.
So it may not require any tax dollars to use anyway.
Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go ahead and go first. Are you okay with that?
Wait a minute,
You just keep on rolling, you just like,
I read in here, she's chief law enforcement officer, you're second.
No, that is not correct. There's
we've had
always,
that discussion.
there's always been a historical difference of opinion on that. She reads one part of it and I read a different part of it.
Okay.
So let's just say that we agree to be equal. Okay?
We
Sound
can
good?
agree to be
All right.
equal.
We'll agree to be equal.
So we need to flip a coin then and see who goes first?
No, I'll go.
Okay.
I'm senior.
There's no chivalry here.
Yeah, I'm senior over Susan, so, I'll tell you what I would like to see, because I think there has been a couple different, and I could be wrong, Robert, but I think there's been a couple different, requests that we've done, but I think the recent one kind of goes back to maybe the original one.
I'm going to defer to Beth, since you've been speaking mostly with her.
Okay, so I think the current one is more equal to what the 2020 budget, fairly close to that number, I think. So, is that correct, Beth?
Yes, the only adjustment is the building reimbursement
Right.
from 68,000 to 192, and then the difference in health insurance.
Okay, and that is no responsibility of mine. So that's the building reimbursement for maintenance, and then the health insurance reimbursement, that those dollars are decided over here and then placed into my budget, so other than that, I'm under the impression that the request for 2021 is very similar to what was approved for 2020, minus those increased, or adding those increases for building maintenance and for health insurance. So I guess I would then entertain questions or whatever from you guys then.
Your budget request actually went down.
Did it go down? Is that correct, Beth?
Yes, there was 75,000 that used to be in prisoner transport
Right,
that was removed because those are paid out of the jail deputies. And then you had 2 staff, under warrants that had retired, and you have these removed.
because they were just listed as part-time and they were just being paid for transports.
Yes.
Correct, Gary Martinez and Kara?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so maybe it did go down a little bit, because we did have them in there part-time. They were helping us do prisoner transports to the doctor and things like that. But they both decided to stop doing that for us, so, we handled that particular option now with, jail staff and with patrol deputies on their off-duty time, so. So Beth, that 75,000 that was listed in prisoner transport, that's just placed now in like salaries?
Under jail.
Okay. All right. So what is the overall decrease? Because I haven't seen it yet myself. I have seen it, but I printed it out, but it's so small I can't read it out. So I'm trying to look to see what my actual overall 2021 request is compared to 2020.
Looks like about 200,000.
200,000 less.
A little less than 200,000.
Okay. Okay.
I know somebody can fix that vision problem.
Well, it is elective surgery, and he's the only one that I would trust to do it, and I don't think he's doing it right now, right? So-
Yes, he is.
Oh, is he? Okay. Okay, well, do you guys have, things are a little bit different now. There's assistance in helping to prepare a budget from this building as opposed to me just doing it completely, so sometimes
We're all getting used to the new system.
yeah, and I as well, so,
Robert, could you flip to the page where the total number is? I'm still struggling finding 11,487.
yeah, and that includes both the sheriff's office and the county attorneys, that number.
So I would entertain a motion to go ahead and manage that overall budget for both departments. If you guys would so be inclined, although she is an elected official, so it may not count, but if she would go ahead and concur with that recommendation, I would be more than glad to step up and run both agencies for us.
And since
You
she's,
don't have a law degree.
I still think a lot.
Can't go to court.
To tell you what to do. So, okay.
They're having way too much fun out there, Mr. Chairman.
Like, question, just back to the budget and, you know, if I was out there on video land watching this and it was a Benton County taxpayer, I'd be going, why are we paying for two different sets of IT problems in the county?
Well,
Two different systems. Why are we running two different systems? And probably to a taxpayer, they could care less, other than they see expenses on one and the other, when it would appear that usually when you have one system, it works better when everybody's all on the same page.
mhm. And when everybody's not on the same page, then that's what requires. But we've always been separate.
I know,
Yeah.
but why?
We had an IT division before the county did. And so we had software and a computer system in place before the county did. We have tried to mesh and incorporate with the county whenever possible, but the most recent issue was a security issue with us for our sieges for the state. I think that there could be I'd probably be safe in suggesting that there is a difference of opinion between the county's IT and my IT about that need to go a different way. But again, we did it because that's what was necessary for us to maintain our security from the state side on the criminal side of things. And so, as it's been brought up today, that did create some issues for the district court in the courtroom downstairs. However, we were able to bridge that and for them to be able to continue their to run the courtroom downstairs. And we're certainly able to do that into the future. However, as the county's IT mentioned, the equipment being used is soon to be outdated and needs to be upgraded. And so it's a simple matter of, does the county want to spend the money? Because they would have to spend the money anyway, even if we were still on the same system as what the county was. That's what we were before we went a different direction because of our security. So there still would have been that cost. So the deal is that does the county want to pay for that cost over there? Or do they want to pay for the upgrade to the courtroom where there is no computer infrastructure cost because they already have that in place at the courthouse?
You just answered my question exactly.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be incurring any of those costs because we should all be on the same system.
But I think with the system that was in place, you would have incurred those costs because that equipment was going to be outdated.
The judges just told us that it is easier to do it on our system now.
Correct. To move over there now, to not be over here.
But we could have done it if this, we didn't have to move to the courtroom if we were all in the same system. And security wise, it's, we handle security for the county attorney and the district court and through the state and seems to qualify.
Right.
I'm still challenged by why we're maintaining two separate IT systems. And it appears to me that down the road, we should merge one or the other into one system.
Well, I can tell you that I don't know if the merging down the road is going to happen between the county's IT and the sheriff's office IT. However, us and the police department are certainly talking about the merging because both of our agencies, and we're in that building together, but both of our agencies have separate software systems, which makes no sense to me and the chief.
Exactly.
So we have been having discussions about the future, about meshing and merging those together so that so all of criminal justice, including the police department, sheriff's office, the district court, and the county attorney's office can be one, but also record record keeping, the ability of both agencies to be able to view each other's stuff, which we currently don't have. And so it's, over the years, it's been a matter of territory between IT departments, is what it's always been. And it's even a matter of territory between not just law enforcement IT, but county IT and law enforcement IT. However, in the future, it makes no sense to me to have it that way. I think everybody just needs to swallow their pride or forget about their territorial issues and do what's best in the interest of the taxpayer of Finney County and Garden City, and try to work and move those together. And so me and Chief Hughes have had those discussions, and we're both on board to do that.
Before we go any further, we do have a motion. I need a second before we continue discussions.
What's your motion?
Didn't you make the motion to, oh, I thought you did, I'm sorry.
No, but I can.
Okay, never mind, continue with questions. I misunderstood you. Further questions?
I have
Dave?
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, and I will caution the chief, she's had to duck once or twice there. We'll use the left hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can switch. I'm left-handed, you're right-handed. Then we're all good.
A question perhaps for Kevin. Recently, in visiting a privately owned and run computer store here in town, I was made aware that there's some services that they could offer they feel less expensive than the county's services. Without naming names, do you know what I'm talking about?
I know that we have enlisted the assistance of a local computer company to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so along Larry's line, as we bring things together, might it make some sense to take a look also outside of the county government for IT services for some professional services here locally?
Yeah, he's exactly right. Whether it's cheaper in the long run for the county to do so, but we certainly have decided to, for whatever reason, for when we switched over for some of our needs, we have contracted with a local computer firm beyond the abilities that my IT folks have, and we utilize them just when it's necessary to do so.
Some switches and whatnot.
Correct. So it's possible, because you don't have them on full time, it's possible that could be a cost savings situation. I'm certainly not, I wasn't expecting to have a conversation about the possibility of the county considering reducing their IT. That's exactly not what I'm here to do. However, we have experienced that ourselves. And so we've thought outside the box, and we've sought them, and we just pay for that service when we use that service. So.
Well, I don't mean to surprise you with launching something here you're not prepared.
Well, it's something that we're already doing.
Yeah, but my point is, maybe it's about high time that we take a look at IT in general, and more specifically, are there some targeted savings that we could come up with and provide as good as or better service?
Well, some of the things that we're doing, and this is kind of a new era for law enforcement, where I don't want to talk about consolidation of law enforcement. That's a bad word. I don't want to talk about that, but the police department and the sheriff's office, especially with me as sheriff and with Chief Hughes as chief, we have gotten together and we've put aside territorial issues and disagreements on who's the better agency, all those kind of things. And we've started talking about the future, what's in the best interest of Garden City and Finney County, of the citizens, and what's in their best interest in tax dollars as well. And so we've been talking about combining some efforts of some folks, some task forces, computer things that hopefully down the road will be some cost savings, but will be of some benefit to the community. So I say it's a new era for us, because neither one of us are thinking about our own agencies as being on their own islands and that we're better or worse than the other. We're thinking about what's in the best interest of the community now. So we do have a lot of plans, and that's what I have every expectation, the remaining time that I have left, and Chief Hughes on the remaining time that he has left, to build a better working relationship between the two largest agencies and moving forward with that for our community.
I want to point out, that's good to hear. You know, city and county commission do try to work together for the same reasons. And it's great for the community.
Yeah, it's
and we
never-
need to continue to do so.
Yeah,
Encourage
it's never really happened in the past, but I can promise you that with our discussions, and sometimes we meet on a daily basis, that's the plan moving forward. And it's a matter of getting all of our officers in our departments on board, thinking the same way that we're thinking, and the city and county commissioners thinking the same way. And I think that it's going to be in the long run of great benefit to the community.
If there's no further questions, can we move forward on the county sheriff's budget?
The attorney, county attorney.
Well, I want to, let's separate them.
Oh, I thought we were doing them as one.
Do you want to-
Law enforcement.
Robert, as one or?
Individually.
Oh,
Okay.
individual. Oh, okay. I would move then that we take the sheriff's budget under advisement.
Second.
I
Thank you,
thought we were
gentlemen.
doing it as-
Further discussion on the sheriff's budget? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Now, Ms. Fitzmark.
I'm glad to hear that they're talking about the same thing, because it would certainly make our lives easier if we all have the same equipment. Because when it comes to things like video and reports that we have to obtain from each agency, we have two separate bridges. Well, actually, we have 4 or 5 bridges that we're building between Highway Patrol, Sheriff, Holcomb, Garden City. So it would be nice if they're all on the same thing. So when we need body cam or car cam, that we can all go to the same website, click the same buttons and get the same information. So, and I think if anything, this was kind of not where I would have normally started, but it's where you left off. What COVID has shown us is where there's a lot of deficiency in our technology. And, you know, sending people home to work from home, I mean, yes, we have connectivity, but it's painfully slow remotely. I mean, and by that I mean I could speak a paragraph, type a paragraph, and it might take it 15 minutes to show up on my laptop from the connection to between the two buildings, and that's not really very conducive for good time management either. So I think if you guys are looking at technology as a whole, one of the things I would strongly encourage would be something that would help those remote connections. I'm not a technology guru by any means, and I'm sorry that Doug's not here, but if there's some way to improve those remote connections so that they're quicker and that these agencies can speak together, that they become more cloud-based, if that's possible, I think it would be to everyone's best interest as we move forward, especially when we are working with the court. And I think Judge Frederick is right. Nobody knows where this is headed at this point. There's so many legal battles to be won and lost over rights of defendants and then citizens in general, even if it's not my office, the legal rights that people are afforded when you're not allowed to come to court in person. I think we're going to have a whole series of appeals that come out of this. Which for us, at this point, we're continuing to argue for in-person hearings because at this time, the way the law reads, it's going to be fewer appeals if we can get them in court than if it's remote. And for us, that's big because we do our own appeal work and have been very successful at it. I just don't know how you argue with the fact that you have someone sitting in jail for 6 months because you can't have a hearing. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I believe that my budget is showing up as smaller than the year prior. If I'm not mistaken, that's because in my conversations with Robert, a good portion of that is an IT person that we had that he is now wanting to put into like its own department instead of being separate. The reason we're going to agree to disagree on this one, but at least at this point, one of the reasons why we fought so hard to have our own independent IT person is so that we would have the service that we needed when we needed it. Because we show up for court at 8:30, something doesn't work, the judge expects us to continue to go forward with the hearing if we don't have the information in front of us because our laptops aren't working or the connection isn't working. We're at a significant disadvantage. So part of why we had that IT person in our budget, which is not there now, is for that immediate service. If we can be guaranteed that immediate service, then it makes it a lot easier pill to swallow. But until such time, I'm going to disagree with at least that portion of the budget that's different from prior years. And it kind of goes in spurts for us. Sometimes we get really good service and sometimes we have to beg and throw a fit for it. And it's very frustrating when we have as much technology as we have in our office and it doesn't work when we need it to work. It's frustrating when we have jury trials and the equipment doesn't work. It's frustrating on a day-to-day basis when it doesn't work. Because 98% of our work is done just right here on these little machines and through servers. So I don't think anything else was that big. I don't think anything else was a big change from last year. That was a majority of it. I have lost, I did lose my deputy. He went back to the Kansas City area. So there may be a slight change in what the numbers of between what he was making and what the current deputy is making.
Susan, it'd be so rude to interrupt real quick with a
Sure.
question about IT. Didn't you share a IT position, half-time for you and half for the court?
We did at one time, I'm going to say 3 years ago, 2 for sure, and possibly 3. Curtis reorganized his personnel over there and hired his own IT person to be in his building for the same reasons, because we weren't getting that immediate service. The problem has been our software. I mean, all of this is a problem. Our software doesn't necessarily talk to their software. And so we're on a different system than they are. And that will, trying to remember when the court system switches over.
You're explaining part of what Larry brings up about melting IT together, kind of a one-man show rather than we've got folks going every direction. IT over there, did have IT, sheriff, so on. So we have a project that's worthwhile to take a look at here.
I think in answer to her deal too, even if everybody shared the same software and computer systems, this building, the county attorney's office, the district court, the law enforcement center, you would probably each still need, because those agencies are fairly large with fairly large amounts of equipment, things, you would probably still need to have an in-house IT person, even if they were employed by one, say the county, to respond to those situations that come up on a daily basis, as opposed to having everybody at one building and then making appointments and then they come whenever. So even with what the question was, I still think it's probably necessary for every building or agency to have maybe their own IT, even if it's under one particular deal or right now we're
But to
under my
answer
budget.
your question, yes, at one time we did share one. For the last 2 to 3 years, we haven't shared one, and what the agreement between my department and Doug has been,
Where you were funding it, he was available to you.
well, essentially, our IT person is in the basement here at the admin center. We have, through a lot of trials and tribulations, kind of come to the agreement that in the event there's something that happens, we take priority and he has to pull them off whatever it is they're doing.
Well, I don't want
And
to
so,
sidetrack us today from
right,
budget.
no, I think you're right. I think there probably is a lot of room for discussion, but for that to happen, it needs to be all the players that we're talking about being in the same room at the same time, going over what the options are. I do think that it's still, my office has finally gotten to a place where we are not having near the problems we were having in the past. The problems we have now are just different. But where we used to have, like, if I were to show up over here and open my laptop, it wouldn't necessarily connect. We're not having that problem anymore. We're maybe having a different one. So I think until we can get some of those things worked out, I believe there's kind of a fiber optic issue with speeds too. Because the way I understand it, and like I said, I am not IT superhero, but I understand it, it's like going from an 8-lane highway into a country road that's 1 lane. And it's just not, we're not able to handle the traffic that's coming in from all of these different areas into our system. And so I think that's probably as big of a project, if not the biggest project, that once it got fixed, it may help some of these other things that we experience on a day-to-day basis. But I
am going to pull the chairman's prerogative here. We're getting off track.
Yeah.
Obviously, when the IT budget comes before us, we can have a discussion. I think your points about all the players getting together in a meeting room is a good idea. But let's kind of move away from IT and get back on track here on budgets.
And when I interrupted her, she was talking about losing her chief deputy, so I'm sorry, Susan.
So I think one of the struggles that we have, or the biggest struggle, and I talk to you guys about this every year, is just maintaining the personnel, especially in the professional department. And right now we're 3 short. So it's just kind of a
It's everyone. You tell us that it's tough, isn't it?
And, you know, I'll put a plug in for moving that courtroom over to the main building, because that would help us from having to juggle another person running over here and then having a hearing 30 minutes later over in another building. They would just all be in the same building, which would be really nice for us. Right now, we don't have enough people to cover all of our dockets, but we do our best, so.
Questions relating particularly to the budget? No more IT, please.
No, this is not IT. My curiosity though, and I appreciate the fact that, and for those online, this is long, that you're 3 short. I appreciate that, and people move on. My curiosity question though is, how long had your deputy been with you?
He had been with us for almost 7 years.
Oh, okay.
Right at 7 years.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and he came out from Kansas City. I think a good portion of the reason why he went back is family.
Yeah, many times that's the case.
Yeah. But since we are online, one of the things that we are doing and have started doing since the courts have opened back up is we're trying to become more electronic on the dealing with traffic tickets and items like that. So we do have the credit card option or debit card option online, and I'm sending over personnel with my attorney so that they can take those payments and get those cases done hopefully in 1 day rather than having to reschedule them down the road and cut down on the docket time, because there have been some days we've been in court till 6:30 or 7 handling 80 people on a docket.
Makes sense.
So
My question to both of you, I guess, is your turnover ratio pretty similar to years past, or have you seen any changes in either one of your turnover ratios, the percentage year to year?
I'll go first because they may be tired of listening to you.
No IT.
Ours has gotten much better, especially since we went to a new management style that the county's been working on, where we're making more of a focus on retention of employees. And so where our greatest turnover rate was previously in the jail, we have seen in the last year a huge reduction of that turnover there. And so so the management styles and principles that we put in place for that, well, they call it HPO, high priority organizations, where you focus on employee retention and all of those things. I think it's greatly improved the attitude and the turnover rate that previously had been happening. So So it's been right now, we're in probably the best situation that we've been since I've been sheriff in 24 years as far as that goes.
Thank you. Susan? Similar? I know you're,
I would say for office staff, we have been able to hire over the last 6 to 8 months. I think, I don't know if it's just the nature of what's going on, but some really, really good and strong personnel that I hope we're able to retain. With the legal profession, I think it's hard to find people who want to devote their careers to public service. It's easy, I say easy, a little tongue in cheek, it's easier to find first year out of law school people to come out here and do 1 to 2 years, get their feet wet, figure out how the courtroom works, and then they leave. We struggle also with our local bar poaching. So we get someone good, then they come in and they want to hire them away from us. And that has happened 3 or 4 times, well, probably, yeah, five times since I've been here. So that's almost 1 a year, 1 every year and a half.
that's gonna be consistent.
That's a pretty, I mean, that's a pretty big pill that you have to swallow pretty consistently. But we recognize that, and I don't struggle with that so much because it then is building those local attorneys and they're staying in the community. But even then, they haven't stayed in the community. Several of them have left. So we deal with just, I don't think there's a magic question when it comes to the attorney staff themselves. I think there's not a lot of things for young people to do in Finney County. As far as like, what do I do on Friday night? How do I meet other young singles? These are the questions that I get asked when we have an interview. And I can't tell them, well, we have 18 nightclubs for you to go to. We have a really strong, young professionals that meets once a week and does this. It's a struggle for those young people to get out and meet other young people. So, there's just not a magic number. And I'd say we've consistently run 1 to 2 short the entire time I've been here.
Okay. Further questions, comments? May I have a motion for the county attorney's budget?
I move we take the county attorney's budget under advisement.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Appreciate it.
See you guys later.
All right, Roger, no IT, please.
How are you?
Good.
I've got some IT issues I'd like to discuss. I'd like to volunteer to take over Susan and Kevin's department also. A little different format, budget-wise, but I think it's also pretty easy to read, pretty understandable. My budget increased a little bit, you'll see, from the past year. Most of it would be contributed to the contractual services. And the capital outlay also went up. The transfers are not in the budget anymore, as you'll note. There's a plan to transfer. Not a lot of changes really. I mean, those are the ones I highlighted right there are the major changes. Any questions?
We'll get there.
Or if you want to speak specifically about projects that you got coming up?
Well,
That you're trying to target or 21?
Projects will be in John's area as far as special highway. Road and bridge projects, we're always, of course, Wildwood's way up on our list of stuff to watch, even though we're just trying to do it as we go. We're always elevating roads throughout the county. Of course, we'll do the crack sealing again next year, hopefully. That crack sealing was kind of a new thing last year because I'm sure short of staff. I can't pull that many guys away from what they're normally doing to have them go crack sealed. So it just makes sense if you're gonna serve the public correctly, do it this way, I believe.
Do you have any major heavy equipment items that are just really high on your want list, or?
The biggest one I got on my want list, we're doing pretty good, and with what we forecasted out here, you can see my wants. The only one that isn't really addressed in there, that is touched upon in the fair budget, would be that RM, it's that recovery machine that grinds up the asphalt and lays it back down. And the reason that one jumps out is because you could redo that entire parking lot with that machine for a fifth of the cost of what it would cost to contract it out. And you'd have to buy the machine, the fifth, that was under exaggerating. But I think, was that $10 million is what we guessed for John? Is that what that was?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like $10 million to completely tear it up and relay it with blacktop. And this machine was about a $650,000 machine. Sounds like a lot because it is a lot, but that's just something you got to keep in the back of your head as we look forward to that. The other thing that we have to look at too when we're dealing with that parking lot is the city doesn't want you to go backwards on your, I guess what you're offering. So if you have blacktop, you can't go backwards. If you have dirt, you can put blacktop on top of it, but you can't go backwards.
So we have discussed the losing part of the west side of that lot,
We've
correct?
discussed that too. You could do part of that parking lot. That's a very fluid thing. There's lots of discussion things that happen then, but one of the, the permitting from the city requires that, once that blacktop's established, you can't tear that blacktop back out. Isn't that correct? How that reads?
So we might have to have a talk with them.
Yeah. It's something we would have to address. And by milling it up and relaying it, you would be going backwards a little bit. It would be a very, we could turn it into a good parking lot with that millings mix. Like I planned on.
Real quick, Dave, if you had that machine, you'd need a long line of trucks with tanks on to haul oil to that, wouldn't you?
No, sir. This is, the price I quoted you comes with a oil tank on it. And this machine doesn't require oil.
Okay.
Also, so that's another thing too. You can lay down a hardening agent in front of the machine and grind it up as you lay it down. You can put water and oil on it. That's, it's a whole, quite a process. But that figure, of course, that was figured last year when we talked about this. But that, as far as road and bridge budget, I guess the thing that's going to be interesting is, there's transfers. There's no real planned transfers other than the end of the year transfers. So, but it does lay it all out, I think, nicely.
The increase in contractual is,
Mostly the road sealing.
we had that same thing this year, right? We contracted it out.
We paid for special highway, correct?
And we paid for crack sealing on a special highway because it wasn't budget.
It wasn't
budget.
I see, so it's just on the general fund budget this year, but we did transfer in special highway money. Do it?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
You're listing it in the budget from general funds right now, right?
From road and bridge.
From road and bridge. Yeah, for under contractual services.
But that's if we commissioners needed to, we could offset it from special highway monies. But you needed further funds, I realize.
Yeah, you can.
You can.
That's why it's there, but it's been earmarked too for other projects.
Right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Larry?
Roger, where are you on your leases on your rotavators? Are any of them up or are you close or what?
We're getting, I think the nearest one is 3 years. You got 3 years left. Okay. I think is correct. Then the other one we just started. Okay. And each one of those are about 85 a year.
Yeah. Also, I noticed on building improvements, what do you have, what building are you talking about here under capital outlay?
I'm not good at that.
Well, supposedly we were spending 90,000 this year.
Oh,
And then
He's
going-
got it on the screen, Roger, if you,
oh, okay.
And then going,
But I believe that was for the, Bruno, buildings at the Bruno.
okay,
Yeah, that was going to be a sand shed, or, you know, something. Everything on hold right now, but we need salt storage.
so the 45 is to the salt building or,
Yeah. Isn't that right? I didn't bring my CIP with me.
which one of you guys can we talk to about, future roads?
Blacktop?
Sure. I mean, I have some of what we've talked about in the past in the engineering side for consultant work.
Where are you on parallel?
It's
What
up
less
there.
parallel?
Well, where do you want it to be is my question, and compared to, we've talked about Third Street and parallel to the road ones, trail master plan, and I think those are the big ones we've had on the list. So I haven't done anything about getting consultants hired because of the COVID and not wanting to spend any more money until we're ready, but those priorities need to be told to me or, suggested which way you want to go. I see Third Street and Parallel Road being $6-7 million projects to build if we're going asphalt and rebuilding either one of them. So that wipes out special highway.
Well, probably, Third Street, just this personal opinion, probably Third Street would affect more citizens than parallel. But I'd hate to see parallel.
Probably affects more commerce than.
Commerce, because I get lots of calls on parallel.
I also got 2-3 bridges in the next 6-8 years too. that I wanna-
And there's lots of issues, I realize on the county roads that are only issues during harvest, and we try to keep up with them. Andy Shear's a great example, they beat it to death for 3 weeks, and then they don't drive on it. There's a very low traffic volume for the rest of the year. So how much time and money do you invest in a 3-mile section of the road that gets hammered for 3 weeks out of the year? So it's something you really gotta think about.
But where, the advantage of parallel, so you'd be connecting to that blacktop systems for not only Finney County, but Kearney County. And I think there's a lot of commercial traffic that uses that road now.
let me ask a question in here too. Farmland's gotta take priority, but how long do we need to recover before we can start one of these projects? If you're talking that kind of money, how many years after farmland before we can bite off something like that?
If we put design services in budget, then we could be 2 years before anything's ready to construct. I mean, we can make them take it longer if we wanted them to, but that's about where we're gonna be on construction, this 2-year design period. Farmland, the way it's set up was not to take any money from road special highway. However, if we come short,
Which we are going to.
we assume so, yeah. Then I don't know any other place to get that money from besides special highway. And at one time we were looking at 500,000 at a minimum what we needed from there. And I'm guessing the way Jenny Barker project went, farmland project is gonna go every bit of what's estimated.
Further questions for Road and Bridge? And we proceed then? With,
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we take the road and bridge budget under advisement.
I'll second.
thank you. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Let's do one or two, since it's John coming up,
It's
then
break
we'll
time,
have a
right?
break. We'll let you do your tough one.
Well, you wanna do the tough one first?
No, let's do the first two.
Which one?
It'll
You
be
have
landfill also.
We have landfill on our,
landfill first? That's the easy one, just say, here it is. Landfill, nothing really changes too much from year to year in the landfill budget. It's mainly there in case we come up with some bad groundwater samples and KDHE makes us do some remediation. We have to have money there to spend if that time comes. There's a little bit in there for council consultant for design and whatever, and then another in there for contractual to actually do the work. There's about $550,000, $560 in some remediation work. We do have responsibilities for doing some groundwater testing out there. I think we do one, and the landfill does the other one twice a year. And so that costs us some money, and hopefully that everything stays good the way it is. We also have some maintenance on the gas extraction system, the flare. We put in a handful of years ago, or a dozen years ago. The landfill maintains it for us and sends us a bill quarterly. And that runs about $300 to $400 a quarter, or a month for them to maintain those. And the rest, some of that is we reimburse road and bridge for trash cleaning ups and whatever materials we haul to the landfill.
Chairman, move take the landfill budget under advisement.
Second.
moved and seconded, discussion?
A question. When we talk landfill, this fund, this landfill east of town, or is this landfill out on,
It's both landfills and the solid waste management plan.
okay, so, sorry. It gets
This one.
confusing here between all of the landfills.
Yeah, this one here, hopefully in the north side up there by Anderson, hopefully we're done. We didn't test it all this year. By via email from KDHE, it says we're done testing. Hopefully that stays that way. I don't know how we find out if we have to test again.
So you get a surprise letter and.
The surprise letter to us out of the blue that we need you to continue for some
All
time.
right, thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion on the landfill budget, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Next one on the list is District Number 1.
Through District Number 1, it's that there, Farmland Road, H&H Trailer Park, and a portion of Bear Links Industrial Park. I think the big items on there are, we have some contractual work, just holding money for lines if we have issues with line. SD1 has no bonds on it. It has a pretty good reserve fund for emergencies, and that's pretty much where all that money, that reserve is in line repair, under other contractual. We're due in 21 to do half of the system, the line cleaning from, and that's why you see some there in there too. There's some money in an equipment line item that hasn't usually been there in the past. with ideas to buy extra pump, have a spare pump on hand if we need it, that's later in the year. Or, first one, we wanted to buy some they're called David cranes. They're like little self-mounted cranes where we can either crank or hook up to the battery to pull our pumps out of the hole. Right now, we use the service truck out of the shop. It ties up a shop guy in their truck from going out to the road and bridge equipment to help us pull pumps. If we had one of these things on each of our lift stations, we could pull our pumps ourselves, with just the two guys that work in the utility department. Our utility and engineering department kind of work together. So those two guys can pull pumps, put them on a trailer, put a new one back in, clean them up, whatever needs to be done by themselves without tying up a truck and a mechanic.
How often does that happen?
Oh, every other month maybe, somewhere, somehow. I think we've already been at Sewer District 1 twice this year. We've got a pump out being repaired. We at least repair a pump a year in every district. Sewer District 2 is probably a couple a year.
Larry?
Well, this is probably a question for all three districts. Do you see your rate increase or change in any of the districts?
SD1, I don't see a need for that here. We've been trying to not, we need to do something maybe different with SD2 because of the way it's just on a mill levy assessment. It's all SD2 is on. SD3 would just, I don't know how much you raise them without making the non-payments even worse. So that it's just not good with the collection. I think they're paying a little bit more than the rest. SD1's pretty low payment. I guess I don't have that number. They're around $18 to $24 a month.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer a motion to take Sewer District 1 budget request under advisement.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion is carried. Let's keep going, John. You're on the roll.
The SD2, really the main, well, I got contractual stuff. I have to remind myself what that was for. There's another more money in line item of equipment for the same type of equipment, the David cranes, in-house. Yeah, right now is a replacement pump for this. Next year would be a replacement pump for one of the lift stations. I think that's the two up on the very east end of Grandview East. Those two lift stations have the same pump. We don't have a spare. If one goes down, one of the lift stations running on one pump. With the idea if that pump would go, we'd steal it from the next one on the line. So we'd like to, we're getting to the point where we can, this district is probably starting to build up some reserve funds that we can get some of the spare pumps and some of that stuff that we have been without, crossing our fingers on for a while. Contractual is the one that just there's the money in there for line clean, our system repairs. We did our line cleaning. We finished up a 3-cycle or 2-cycle last year. I think those were the big line items. They're contractual. Yeah, that was the line item.
A real quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Go for it.
John, quick question. The pump, is the pump in Sewer District 2 the same as a pump in Sewer District 1? Or are they still different?
They're still different.
Okay.
And in fact, there's 7 lift stations in SD2, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pumps between. So,
I don't know who designed all of that, but
I think you do know who designed it.
maybe so.
Do, Are you still getting requests for expansion of sewer district two?
Actually, I do have a request, and I think we can make him happen. He's just like 2 doors down from Temples. And the way Temples was put on was on grinder pump and a little force main that tied into the force, and we could tie on the end of what Temple put in for him. I get few, but only when they have septic issues is when I have any requests for it. Nobody ever says anything that we should or shouldn't. And I'm starting to tell myself that I can tell them, no, we can't get you hooked up. There is $10,000 in consultant in here. I think there's a few dollars in consultant and utility under Road and Bridge. If that were to ever happen, we have money available for a consultant to help design some of that. And then reimburse Road and Bridge and the District 2 as it happens. But I don't know really where to go with that. If we should put effort into it, keep it there, or just let it happen as it may happen or doesn't happen. I think we are getting to a point. The last year, I think we put in the 3rd system in somebody's house. First one with the ATU, but we had to replace the tank and the lateral field, and that really shouldn't happen anymore. So if they have an issue again, don't know what to do with that person, that house. I hate to be the one around that says you can't put another system in, and so your house is worthless now because you have no sewer. But
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's, Dr. Clifford here, there's just been no appetite for the expense of doing it. And these systems, what do you think the average replacement cost is now?
15 to 20.
15 to 20,000. I think folks are going to start digging up their front yards, personally.
That one had to re-level their backyard to get it to go in. I think the original 2 were really small, which helped. You know, undersized tank, undersized field, but they did have to.
No input from the HOA?
It's just everybody fails at different times, and, you know.
That's the hard, they may realize that, they may not, but I see it when, especially now with the septic issue, you know, dealing with the septic permits. You have this guy, and then by the end of the year, the 2 houses down has the same issue, you know, name. Now, this guy's not ready because he just refixed it. He wasn't ready before because he wouldn't have problems.
I can resurvey the neighborhood. I mean, there were only 2 of us at 27 last time who wanted to go to the expense.
To me, I don't know if is it worth the effort?
But there is consultant money here if we.
There is some in here, there's a little bit to get started, I think. And where that lands, that we can, like I said, I also put some into the utility division of Road and Bridge for this, thinking if it ever happened, we use that money that Road and Bridge would get reimbursed with the bond issue when it got built. So.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to take Sewer District 2's budget under advisement.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried.
SD3, probably no big changes in the budget. I did put 8,000 for a replacement pump for those 2 lift stations. All have the same pumps, but we don't have a spare, so it would be just one of those on hand. We don't have right now. And then years down the line, some cranes or a camera, whatever. But that's the biggest increase of anything in that budget, which still $6,000 more than last year. I don't see necessarily raising rates up too much, but we're still on, we went to a bipartisan, or we still have to have a resolution for the bipartisan. So yeah, we can.
Questions?
Ready for a motion?
I hear questions.
I'll allow for the motion to take Sewer District 3's budget request under advisement.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Good job. John.
Well, thanks.
The last one on our list is noxious weed.
Well, at least you did say aye.
First one here, last one at the table, right? Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. As far as I can see on this, there's my phone list. I haven't seen any real changes. The chemical budget went down just a little bit as far as our chemical sales, but it's pretty much an average where it's at, so. Other than that, I don't really see anything different or something we can add right now, so.
Mr. Chairman, I move we take the noxious weed budget under advisement.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There was one thing on here, the prairie dog bait, it's usually been taken out of the general fund. That was voted in a year before I even started, so. In 88, I think, so the commission at that time decided to take the bait out of the prairie dog project out of that general fund, so.
So no more prairie dog control then, is that what you're saying?
No, we still have some prairie dogs in Phoenix County, so.
So was that be included here instead of in general?
No, it should be in the general fund.
Oh, okay, so it's not.
Yeah, it's not in this, it's not in the chemical fund. It's in-
Back then, we looked at farming out your expertise to surrounding counties, and we couldn't, as I recall. There was some kind of a.
There's been some discussion about that, but, about the only place that we've made go would be Haskell County. They don't actually have anybody that treats their prairie dogs there, so.
Are you up to staff, Kevin?
No, we still need to hire one guy. COVID hit and all that, so.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
That is the end of the list,
We haven't
gentlemen.
voted.
Pardon?
We haven't voted, have we?
Yeah, we did, didn't
Aye.
Aye.
we? Aye. Yeah, we voted.
Lack of rain has done more for noxious weed than anything.
Yeah.
Good point. Anything further to come from the budget meeting, Robert?
We do have an opportunity to pick up a couple of more budgets if you want to get today.
Who's available?
I think we have EMS and Health Department as well. Ben, is that correct? They're both prepared, or I'll ask them.
Can we take a real short break?
Yeah, let's do them, but let's take a 5-minute break.
You can find out.
Make it 10.
10, okay, Dave says 10.
Sure.
And I need to make sure I leave by 11.
Fair enough. We reconvene 20 after.
Hurry.
What do you want to do?
You got a road trip for this?
Yeah, gotta get out of one of the chance.
Does this make sense?
I had to get back.
All right, so they'll get you the numbers here. The main thing that we're kind of looking at here on mine is looking at increasing some of our capital outlay here and trying to move towards a more accelerated program to purchase an ambulance. So right now we kind of have the $75,000 per year to purchase an ambulance every 2 years. It's kind of what we've done. And we have, at times, we have even pushed that away. We have removed that dollar figure a couple times in the past. The main reason I'm kind of wanting to do that is, our call volumes, like last year, we had 3,400 calls last year, roughly, and that's up from just a few years ago. We were at 2,900 calls per year. Right now, if we look at just the mileage that we have on the ambulances right now, my lowest mileage unit is 62,000, then I have an 87,000, and then everything after that is all above 140,000. We end up putting about 4 to 5, sometimes 6,000 miles per month combined between the 3 main units. We have 3 teams out there; those are the 3 main units. So we rack up the mileage pretty quickly on those. If we went to one thing is right now I have 7 ambulances. I would propose that we reduce that fleet by 1. We go down to 6 ambulances. I do have an ambulance that doesn't put a lot of mileage on it. And so we can reduce by 1, and that would allow us to have 1 ambulance and 1 backup at each station. If the proposed that other station comes through there, they're the Joint Fire Police EMS station. They're on Shulman. There would be 2 stations in Garden, 1 station in Holcomb. And if we had a unit and a backup unit in each one of those, that would be 6 ambulances. The main reason where a lot of times that the backup ambulance come into use is for our football standbys. Sometimes we'll have up to 3 of those going at once. And so we oftentimes have a lot of ambulances out at once, especially during football season. I don't have data right now to put in front of you, but we have noticed an increase in what we call status 0 here in this year especially. When we have all 3 of our ambulances out at the same time on call, we have seen a pretty significant increase of that. I can't give you a specific figure. We just anecdotally kind of looking at it, we notice that it's increased there a little bit. So that is one of the big ones that I kind of want to look at there. And ambulances their cost is increasing pretty significantly. It wasn't too long ago that we could get a pretty good ambulance for around 100. Now I think it's getting really close to 150. Especially if we start trying to factor in some of these, there's some kind of big ticket items on an ambulance. One of those is what we call the power load system. This is a system that takes the muscle work out of loading the unit or loading the cot into the ambulance itself. We do have power cots that allow them to, battery powered hydraulic cots that raise and lower the cots outside of the ambulance without much effort. However, getting it into the back of the unit does take some significant effort. The power load system by Stryker alleviates that quite a bit. I would say as an industry-wide, especially many services are going to that power load system. The system itself is about roughly $20,000, and then include that with about a $20,000 cot to go with that. So that does add a little bit of a cost there. I like the power load system. I have been reluctant to pull that trigger for quite some time, but my service, the personnel in my service are smaller people. We do have a significantly higher female population. They usually, not always, but they tend to be a little lower on the raw strength side of things. They tend to be shorter, it's going to be a little smaller. Not always, but that's kind of the average, kind of the trend that we see. And this would help improve that and reduce some possible back injuries and stuff like that just from loading an ambulance. So that's where we're kind of wanting to go with that. Our goal would be great is if we could. So if I have 6 ambulances and we try to replace those every year, then that means that ambulance would have about a 6-year lifespan in our service. And then the first 3 of those, if we did it every year, so it would have heavy use for 3 years, and then it would be put into a backup situation after it phased out. And so the mileage would go down there a little bit, but it would be still useful for backup situations.
How many miles do you project after that 6-year period?
So if we do, roughly about 1,500 to 2,000 miles per month on each unit. So that would be about 24,000 miles, kind of a little bit on the high end per unit per year. So you're looking at about 75,000 miles. By the time that unit went from the main use into a backup situation, it'd be at about 75,000 miles right there. So we want to try to look at around, moving these things out at 100,000 miles or somewhere in that.
Which is lower than what you told us our lowest ambulance is right now, then, correct?
Yeah, our ambulance, lowest ambulance right now is 67,000. So I mean and that is from that 67. That's a 2016. Now we do have a 2017 ambulance. It has 144,000 miles. That's because it was a transfer unit. Those units, when you start going to Wichita and putting 400 or 500 miles per trip on those, that's where that mileage starts to come up. We've kind of implemented.
Skyler,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Just interrupt. When you're talking about transfers, are you still doing those a lot, or is that?
We've seen a reduction there a little bit on those, but we still do those. We still go to Wichita quite often. Now there are some competitors. We do have some private industries. We have Critical Care Transport in Ulysses, and then there's Midwest Transport. I think they have a base in Scott City.
Who decides?
It's just kind of depends. The hospital tends to call us first, but sometimes if we have another ambulance out, I don't ever send more than one ambulance out of county at a time, just because then that reduces our 911 capability. So it's up to the hospital, honestly, whoever they want to call. They typically call us. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they call us.
Is it cost effective to do those?
It depends, honestly. It depends on, if we're getting paid for those. A lot of times we'll do a self-pay transfer, and very rarely do we collect much on those. But if they do pay, if it's an insurance, if insurance does pay, they are pretty profitable. Because not only do you get to put your base pay on there, or base rate, for what type of call, a BLS call or an advanced life support call, then there is a mileage fee for loaded miles. So for every mile that we transport a patient, there's a fee for that. So when I'm adding 212 miles of mileage as opposed to 2 or 3 for a 911 call, that's where we start seeing some.
Can you pick and choose which ones you do and which ones you don't?
You can. That is kind of a little bit of a public image situation there when you start saying, I'm going to take ones that I can pay, ones that I can't. You start kind of playing a little game there. Additionally, I can't change my rates based on whether or not they can pay or not. It's either this is a service I provide, this is how much it's going to cost. Either insurance pays it or the patient pays it. I can't cut them a break.
You can't collect in advance.
It's very, 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 it's very problematic to try to do that. We can try to do that, but it becomes an issue.
From a taxpayer standpoint, it doesn't make sense to do that out of charity.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's where we kind of run into some issues there on that to try to set. And sometimes we don't know what they're going to pay. Sometimes we don't know how much insurance is going to pay for it. We can get a pretty good idea. We know that we as far as Medicare is concerned, we typically charge about what Medicare, or we already charge more than what Medicare is going to pay us. And they are our number one payer by a very large margin. However, some of the private insurance companies, they do pay a little more for certain things, and so they were willing to collect. That's why when we changed our price range back several years ago, we knew that we were going to have more write-offs because Medicare wasn't going to pay the extra money, but some of the private industries were. But we were already collecting from Medicare about what they would pay. So, yeah.
Skyler, does this budget go ahead and start that rotation you're talking about, effective with this budget?
Yeah, let me look here. That was our goal there on it. So that goes up into that. Let me come back here. if we look at, on the capital outlay there, so for this current year, we had $75,000 set aside for the purchase of a new ambulance. And then so for next year, I moved that up to 200,000. Okay, so that's where we're gonna try, that's per year cost to try to buy a new ambulance every year.
Any salvage value on the units you're getting rid of?
There is, some, but you're talking like maybe $10,000 is what you're gonna get out of them. A lot of times what they're buying is the box. And I know the company we use, Osage, they're really big, they really like that's what they'll do remounts and they'll take the box and remount it. We're actually, prior to COVID, we were going to get another ambulance this year, which that's already been approved, we already had that in the pipeline, that's already it's gonna be, they're gonna start production on it here fairly quickly. COVID obviously put a very significant time delay in that, so we will be getting a new unit, it'll be probably early next year by the time it's delivered. That is a remount. And so when you remount an ambulance, what you're doing, you're basically just buying a new chassis, you're buying the engine and all that. You do save about anywhere from just depending $30,000 to $50,000 when you try to do a remount, which is what we are going to try to do from here on out if we can. We did have most of our older units are all diesel chassis engines, and we really kind of had some maintenance issues with diesel chassis. Turbos were going out, we just really couldn't stay on top of them. These last 3 units that we have are all gas-powered engines. Now granted, they're new, and so they haven't had time really to act up, but our maintenance costs on those 3 ambulances exponentially less than what it was on the diesel units. But they're also older, significantly older, so.
Care to field more ambulance questions, or you want to go on with your rest of your budget?
Yeah, no, I'm good with that.
Cool.
Unless you guys got questions. Additionally, we're also looking at what we're trying to do here. I don't know if this is a budget question or not. I would really like to look into purchasing or building a new building. We're talking about the Joint Health and EMS station up there, trying to put that in. That's going to have to go through a different process there on how we're going to fund that through a tax initiative or something like that. So we have some of that land there at 8th and Mary, still trying to acquire. There's another, that was about 2 acres of land. We're trying to acquire the 3rd acre. The gentleman that owns that land is eccentric. And so he's supposed to be getting in contact with me here in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully we can hash out a deal on trying to acquire that. The building that I have is, my parking lot is in bad shape. The building itself has some roof leak issues. It has numerous issues that I'd like to have fixed in the future. So additionally, we have some radios, the 800 megahertz radios that we have. We need to start the models that we have, especially the portables, the handhelds. Those models are not supported anymore. So we can get those repaired as long as out there in the wild there are enough parts, old parts, to get those repaired. That is going to quickly be decreasing. And so we're looking at right now, so my radios still work, but I need to start thinking about phasing those out. And so my plan right now is to buy about 3 per year. They're about $5,000, $6,000 a piece. 3 per year, and that's just the handhelds. The ones that go in the ambulances are a different story. They're a little bit more expensive. So 3 per year. Still use the ones that we have until we don't repair them anymore, and try to build up the ones that we have so that we're not going to lose any kind of radio capability that we may need. Additionally, we're looking at we purchased 2 monitors already. We do need to consider going through those on the lifespans of those cardiac monitors. That's part of the plan there as well. On looking at purchasing those. We try to use a craft grant to supplement that. So the craft grant will pay. Those monitors are about $35,000 a piece. If we get the craft grants through the state, then that'll usually pays for about $20,000 of one of them. We did not get that this last year, like we were hoping. But then they do that every year. So we have some equipment reserves in there, monitor purchase. We're looking at an IV pump purchase to replace the ones that we have that are aging. Additionally, we have in there for equipment reserve on what's called a Lucas, that's the automatic CPR device. We currently have one that we purchased through the CRAFT grant, but we would like to have those on the 3 main trucks if we could. So what that does is that allows to have consistent CPR on those that go into cardiac arrest. So you have very consistent chest compression is the most important thing in a cardiac arrest event. The Lucas device helps reduce any sort of fatigue on the person. The depth's always the same, the rate's always the same, and we've seen some pretty good results with it. Currently, I only have one. So right now it stays in the supervisor vehicle, and so if they get called out for a cardiac arrest, then the supervisor has to take that to them. Otherwise, if we just had it in one of the units, that unit may be out on a nosebleed somewhere, and the next call that comes in at the same time is a cardiac arrest, so they would have to go to retrieve it from that unit and bring it back, so the supervisor carries it out. It would be great if we could have those on the trucks as well. So that's the big purchases that we're kind of going through there on that. Have some stuff for uniforms as well. Put those in there. We have this old logo still because we went through this and got new uniforms like just a couple of months before we went through the new logo initiative. So we're going to try to phase these out and get new ones in there for that. So additionally, we have some extra costs in there. We're looking at changing our billing software. Our billing software that we use is it's just under $4,000 a year is what we have. We're not very happy with it. It seems to be, there's better programs out there that we're looking into. And so we're want to put money in there to help get an updated billing software, an easier billing software. Right now at 3,400 calls, and granted probably about half of those are billable, but that we're pretty much right at the limit is what one billing manager can handle per year. Addition to all the other office management that she does. So we're hoping that with a more intuitive, more updated billing software that she would be more productive in her.
Will that be consistent with health department, or are you going to have 2 different systems there?
They're different. They're different because of just the way we code it. I mean, I guess we could look into, because the health department used to do our billing. In fact, but my current employee was poached from the health department for that. But it is different. There are some different things that they go through. It's not the same software. But we could look into if it's possible to get a dual purpose billing program. I'm just not aware of that. There's one that works quite that way for both. Like that. And then we have some others that we've always had, the fleet track or the GPS tracking on our units, which has been very beneficial. We're also looking at upgrading our EPCR. That's our patient care records. Right now we're using the free program provided by the state, but it has some shortcomings to it. The big one that we're running into now is that one requires an internet connection all the time. And a lot of times we're running into sometime where there's a fault in that. I mean, we lose connection somehow. That's the biggest problem for us is where we capture our signatures electronically, just to reduce paper, and it's integrated into the system. We have enough that it's an issue is they'll capture a signature, and for whatever reason it doesn't carry over, it doesn't save it, and so then we lose a patient signature, which is very, very difficult to go back and get. The upgrade to this free software is that it can work offline as well. I mean, it has to connect at some point, but it works offline, and so that it can save all that information for us. Granted, this was the salesman who's trying to sell his product, but he said the free software is like public transportation. Yeah, it gets you from point A to point B, but you go on their schedule, you go on their vehicle, you go their route, you do everything how they want you to do it. Where if you purchase the advanced license, then you go on the vehicle you want to go in, you go where you want to go, you go the route you go as fast as you want to go. It's kind of to put it into a metaphor. That's how they describe that one. Additionally, we have some maintenance plans in there as well. So the more equipment that we get, the more expensive equipment that we get, you know, it's prudent to have maintenance plans for those to make sure that your $20,000 cot is still performing the way it needs to be performing, and it's getting, you know, preventative maintenance done every year. So we have maintenance plans on our cots, maintenance plans on our, and then the two different cardiac monitors, because we have the old physio controls, and we've moved over into these Zols to kind of utilize those. So there's some maintenance plans on there as well. So right now we have, you know, we have the 3 teams. You know, there's 2 teams in Garden, 1 team in Holcomb, plus the supervisor. So every day there's 7 technicians on. That's our current workforce now as far as responding to calls. Additionally, I have the billing manager, and then myself and my assistant director is administration. We do have some, we are running into a little bit of an issue with the reserve members, the part-time bank of people that we use to kind of cover time off. Paramedic takes off, we need to have someone cover that position so we can keep that ambulance rolling. Our reserve bank is very, very small right now compared to what it used to be. That's coupled with a lot of times that these people that work part-time, that's just as needed. There's no set schedule for a part-time person to work there. They just come when we need them. And so it's very hard for them to have us, you know, these are people that they quote unquote do this as a hobby, and EMS is their hobby. And so a lot of times they work from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So if someone takes off during the week or gets sick during the week, it's very difficult to cover these people with a reserve bank. And so we use, if we have to, we have to pull in another full-timer, so there's an extra added overtime cost there. Occasionally, and the other issue is we do have a 1,000 hour per year limit on reserve members. Otherwise, they start qualifying for capers, and there's an elevated cost there. And so, because usually we'll have 1 or 2 people that can work whenever, but if, let's say I have someone out on FMLA, then that person, their schedule is open, and so then we have 1 or 2 people that can fill that position because for whatever reason they're able to. But then that 1 or 2 people really start racking up the hours and get to that 1,000 hours annually pretty quick.
Are you ready for questions?
Sure.
All right. Dave has been kind of antsy here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Dave for those online, if anybody's left with us. 2 quick questions, Skylar. You've alluded to part of my question, but where are you on staffing across the wide spectrum of your service?
So right now, I have an open position right now. We had some recently move on to go to another, they're moving. And then I'm going to have another one here fairly soon as well. The main issue I have is everyone that has applied so far, they're all EMTs. I have very, very few paramedics that apply. That is becoming very, very, very difficult to try to attract paramedics here. We do have several right now. I have a couple that are waiting to test. I have one that's in the process of completing her paramedic education. She just needs to get the state board out of the way. And then I have 2 more that are currently enrolled in the class. So their paramedic status is several months out. But other than that, I have a couple of EMTs that haven't even begun the paramedic program yet. But it's hard for us to get paramedics to come here. We try to grow them here, if you want to use that vernacular, through the college. But even they're having some small.
Well, from time to time, you have reported over the years about at the community college, there's a class underway with 6 participants or 8 or whatever. Are you saying that right now there are only 2 participating in that training?
2 from my service. I mean, not all of these people that are in this class are available to me.
Well, you need to have a recruiting effort there.
Yeah, that's what we need to try to get there. Is we've gone to some of the high school and college recruitment days to varying degrees of effect.
And then my second and I think final question, Skylar, the sales tax initiative, and among other things, somebody's going to build a fire station with an EMS component. Mm-hmm. Have you been involved any at all? Have the city or design staff involved you in design of your part of that?
There
deal?
was some at the very beginning. There was a little bit of communication. It's very limited right now. I have talked with Chief Beatty, and then we had plans prior to COVID and everything about getting together. And so he has reached out to me about, hey, let's talk about what we need. But that conversation hasn't quite taken place yet. But he's like, hey, we need to get together and find out exactly what you need and what I need. But as far as and I've reached out just kind of side conversations with some of the city about it, but this was some time ago, but I have not received any sort of official.
Well, the reason I ask, I don't know whether they have plans for enough room in the bay, EMS bay, for one ambulance or for two, or for what?
Yeah, so that's what I'm working with Chief Beatty on here soon.
All right,
on how we do that.
thanks.
I might address that, and I think Commissioner Clifford can too. When I bring that up at Oversight Committee, Mac kind of tends to dodge that.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I don't fall into the asterisk, Garden City Fire Department and EMS in like little tiny print in the fine print.
I'm fighting for you on that one, but it seems like.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering because like they do have like I've seen that their initial plans for it, and so it's big and beautiful, and then it has this block of this one spot that's open for EMS, and it's just a blank square, and there's not going to be enough there for that, and so we could run into some issues with differences in schedule. They work a different schedule than we do, and so the shared resources, how do we work that out? But
we do need to keep the conversation over with the chief.
Yeah.
This may be a good agenda item for our joint meeting.
Yeah. Because I definitely want to be. I don't want to be an afterthought. I don't want to have a closet there where I have a.
Well, that was part of the reason the county wanted to join, let alone the Jenny Barker issue.
Right.
This issue was also very important. That's why we joined that initiative.
Yes, I think it's very important for that second station in Garden because then it allows me to break. Because right now I have two teams in one station that alternate calls. Break them apart. I have two jurisdictions that I can work through. So.
Agreed. Further questions for the?
You ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll offer the motion to take EMS budget request under advisement.
Clifford, second.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Thank you, Skyler. Okay. Emergency.
Hey, Dave, hand me your whole book.
Emergency management. I'm going to swipe it before it goes that far.
Yeah, I think we can keep this pretty brief. Our budget's somewhat limited with the 2% we have in our office. We pretty much stayed in line with the previous budgets that were adopted. So a couple of the increases are, of course, salary went up because of my position being reappointed. Plus, we got some initiatives on this for a phase-in of a potential vehicle. That's going to be about a 3 or 4 year process. So we're going to allot money for the next few years for that, so we can do that procurement. Also, as Skylar noted, our portable radio cache is falling behind a little bit, so we're going to we got some money put aside for that to engage them this year. As well, we get a grant. We're going to take some of that grant and allot some of that money, rechallenge some of that money so we can get a couple extra radios. And that's going to be a 4 to 5 year process as well. So that's really, it's pretty consistent. I think we continue to be a good steward of the taxpayers' money, and we're sensitive to that. We get a lot of bang out of the emergency management department. I think it's really, this primary example of that is the latest CD19 response. We're, not just communicating within the county, multi-agencies, but we're reaching outside the county with the city, private sectors, nonprofit sectors. We engaged other counties within the region, and we're in daily engagement with the state. So we do a lot of active things that you don't always see on a budgetary type of exercise. Okay. Part of our budget is that we really want to enhance our safety initiative within the county. When you look at you track and look at our insurance carrier, they looked at our last 4 years. We had considerable expenses, payouts on, slips, trips, and falls, and back injuries. So what we want to do is kind of re-engage our county employees with a safety philosophy, be more focused on identifying, situational awareness, things of that nature, so we can maybe have a cost recovery or a cost savings that maybe won't show itself initially, but maybe within, by eliminating those strips and falls and things of that nature, it's going to be cost recovery down the road for us. So that's pretty much it. Pretty self-explanatory on the budget there.
Okay, gentlemen, discussion?
Just the, in addition of the 25,000 for the health reimbursement, we just never had that before. Line 5456.
That's right.
And that's driving up the contractual. It's just something we overlooked in the past.
Apparently, yes.
Thank you. No question.
Now, this is kind of probably a general question, Robert. I've noticed we're getting a lot of funds started. It's a good plan. Is that part of your overall strategy, Robert? Different funds for replacing equipment and so forth?
Absolutely, yes, that's correct. It's a beginning of the process of the equipment recovery and replacement. That way it helps reduce, if not entirely eliminate, that catch-up mode that oftentimes we can get into. So it's just a systematic approach of setting monies aside throughout the years for scheduled replacement.
Okay. Thought so, but I wanted to bring that out because we've kind of seen this so far today. And okay.
I don't mean to complain, but I don't have any forms here about his budget.
Yeah, it was the second page.
Second page of ambulance.
It was second page of what she
Oh.
handed out.
Forgive me.
So your complaint is invalid, sir?
It says ambulance fund at the top.
Well, it says emergency management.
Okay, I'm sorry. You've been renamed, Steve.
Get used to that emergency management.
I'm going to take the emergency management budget under advisement.
Second.
We're moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Do we have some paper on health department?
I believe.
Those are in your book.
They're in our book. All right.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna need to leave, so I'm gonna just do that now instead of in the middle of her presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lon.
Good morning, how are you all doing?
Right. You're doing well. It looks like you're survived the COVID almost.
You got a look on that one.
It's, sure. It's still been very interesting in my world, to say the least, so there's plenty to do.
Before she starts, I noticed you had another one of those 9 positive days.
We did.
Is that a family again, or
It was not. It was all separate individuals.
so demographically you have no idea where that came from?
So since that was later in last week, we are still trying to connect all of those dots. I will say it takes considerable amount of time to do the investigation portion and the contact tracing. So I do have staff working on that. But yes, it was, we were a little bit surprised about that. So closely monitoring those numbers, of course. So as you can see, our budget, I was gonna kind of highlight a few changes, and then also talk to you about the goals for 2021 and some initiatives that we have kind of had in the works. So you'll see some raises because of, we brought in WIC and have budgeted for WIC now. Prior years, we've had that in a completely different fund that has not been budgeted because it's reimbursed from the state. And so this year we're having it as a budgeted expense to then recoup the grant payments from WIC at the state level. Preparedness budget was also added. That's another fully funded grant. We were allotted $28,031 for grant year, grant fiscal year 2021, which goes from July 1st of this year to June 30th of next year. So that will impact both years. One to highlight pharmaceutical wise, slight jump there, slight increase there. Mainly because if there happens to be a new vaccine that comes onto the market, that is something that we do want to budget and expect as a budgeted expense to raise. And then employee clinic and wellness, we are trying to align better tracking of those expenditures that have to do with our wellness program. So we are aligning that together into one fund so that we may track those expenses better. Previous years, we have had some of those expenses that have come out of employee benefits fund and some out of the health department fund. So instead, we want to budget all of those expenses from the wellness portion of the health department fund to create a better tracking on those expenditures. You'll also see the difference between professional services from last year to this year. The benefits portion of employee salaries were moved to the employee benefits fund to help offset some of the other increases of the funds. Pharmaceuticals, of course, are one of my highest expenses. Anytime that we have an increase in immunizations or new vaccines that come onto the market, that is one of the first places that I will have a large increase. As well as our long-term, long-acting reversible contraception. So, as you know, Centura does own all of the clinics in town other than Genesis and the health department. So when we are thinking about birth control and providing those services, we now have one of two clinics. We are one of the two clinics that provide those services. So we will likely see an increase in volume there. Some of the initiatives that we are focusing on for 2021 is increasing our educational outreach and opportunities. So we have our community health educator, Maggie Unruh, have had a design plan with her to increase outreach, but also we are using her to help design some educational classes that we would like to do. Some of those are going to surround puberty and family planning initiatives. So puberty, safe sex, those types of classes that we will eventually bring back and start doing more of. We do outreach with that program to Holcomb and other schools and also JDC to do safe sex education there. Of course, we want to also increase our outreach events depending on what happens with the remainder of this year. Typically parades or festivals. We would like to continue to have an educational booth to provide outreach, have our brochures that are redesigned and printed for those opportunities in English and Spanish and other languages, so that we can have a booth at events to help promote the services of the health department, or that we are the health department and we exist. That's always the big thing, because a lot of people don't know exactly what the health department does. We also want to grow our family planning program. As I previously stated, again, we are one of two clinics that provide that service to our community. So that is a big opportunity for us to increase it. Also, our community care clinic. We have our nurse practitioner, Johanna, who sees primary and urgent care needs with that clinic. I believe that's an outreach that we can do. When we are still potentially 14 to 15 medical providers short in Finney County, that is a huge service that we can promote within our community to do primary and urgent care needs for our community. Of course, we also want to continue and increase our utilization of our community health educator. We have launched new marketing campaigns this year to help put together promotional items on our services and then disperse those materials around our community to continue increasing our numbers. We've been able to, when you look at our revenue, our user fees from our revenue, or revenue from our user fees over the last few years, we have been able to increase our revenue collections due to our medical record system that we implemented in 2018. We've been able to refine some billing practices and also some billing analysis of billing analysis and cost analysis with our time spent and energy spent on providing specific services to our community, and then also evaluating what our cost is to provide those services. So we've been able to adjust our billing practices that way. We've also recently implemented an online payment system with our medical records that allows users to pay online instead of having to come into the health department. Of course, as Skylar had mentioned, if we can find some way to fund a new building for health and EMS, or health or EMS along those lines, I believe that will greatly help our outreach to the community, have a presence on a main road to increase foot traffic. I believe those are initiatives that we could benefit from in getting the health department some more attraction to our community. Connectivity is also our other issue. So our internet can be patchy. We have some issues along those lines. So with that new building, if that's something else that can be funded to help our connectivity, that would be instrumental to our success as well.
I have a question on your connectivity. We approved some cable headed that way. Is that project high fiber optic? Is that
That would be something that we could highly benefit from, yes.
has that process started?
No, I don't believe so.
No, well, you'll have to bring me up to speed on that. I was informed that that was a, potentially a several $100,000 project.
I thought it was underway, was it not, guys?
No, it was a decision to use Cox instead.
I thought there
Because
was
of the cost.
issues with finding contractors to do the work.
Okay.
What I will tell you is that we have had discussions here within the last month about trying to incorporate that as an expenditure under the COVID-19 CARES Act. That connectivity for the health department and as well as the EMS station.
That'd be really slick.
So that's a project that currently IT is working on, solidifying the cost estimate on that, and then we'll send that off to the state for their review and potential approval. And so we're reaching out to a potential partner to try and help expedite that process so we can get it done prior to the end of the year. So that's one effort that we're shooting for right now.
Dave?
I have a question first for Colleen and then a second question for both of you. The first question to you, Colleen, the city of Garden City, did they not do away with their employee clinic in-house and farm that out to a contract operation?
They have, so the Grow Well Clinic has been run by a third-party vendor for several years. Yes.
Right. And that third-party vendor, now in the interest of transparency, contacted me and said that she had presented an idea to our HR staff about perhaps taking over the county's employee clinic operation and has heard nothing back. Is this something that's an ongoing consideration or is it a decided issue?
No, I believe that they provided us with an invitation to go tour that facility, I guess, as well. And quite honestly, I'm not certain where that is at. I know there was some discussion about trying to do that here about a month ago, but we were still under a lot of other things with the COVID-19.
Okay, last week got a hold of them and said she'd heard nothing back, so.
So the times that we have looked at the opportunity of pursuing that for employee clinic versus keeping it in-house at the health department, there is a significantly different expense there. Their option is potentially going to cost the county a considerable amount than keeping it in-house at health
So you are, okay.
From what we've looked at previously, I will say that.
Well, I don't know what to tell her. Is it still a live issue, dead issue, or what?
We'll contact her this week and follow up on it.
Okay, thank you.
Colleen,
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to thumb through what does your contract with Dr. Burns cost us a year?
So we're doing $850 a month.
$850 a month.
Okay.
$825.
That
$825.
have you got you see a projected increase every year then with that, or?
So last year, our amount was $800 a month, and then I bumped it to $825.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's fine. I just couldn't find it just.
Sure. Mainly the idea there is that if the county is giving a 2% raise, I'd like to at least evaluate that.
That's understandable.
Sure.
Further questions?
I mean, we take the county health department under advisement.
And I'll second that.
Appreciate it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. You're doing all your testing now at the health department.
Yes, sir.
So I drove down to the fairgrounds and you guys are all gone.
Yep. We vacated the premises, so.
Okay, we can have a dog or a pony or a horse show or something down there again.
Yeah, whichever you choose, yes.
All right, thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
Within limits.
Yeah.
That whole issue's different than last year.
That is the last of them.
That's the last of them. I appreciate you working in three of them. I'm sure they are glad to be off the agenda as well. Anything together?
Before we close, may we ask our county administrator a question?
Go for it.
Have you been able to keep up on all the webinars on CARES and so on? Or are you at the point where you're saying, hey, somebody come and help me? Where are you on that?
Actually, both. and I've drug others along with me as well. So we do have a COVID-19 or CARES Act group that sits in on all of those together, so we make sure we monitor. I did meet with a college last week on some cost recovery. Had planned on getting out an email to all of those taxing units this weekend, and didn't make that happen, so it'll be this week. And that's for the reimbursement aspect of it. And then we're going through that process of identifying future spending needs under that CARES Act or the SPARK program, which would, in essence, create an opportunity for us to, one of the intents of it is to prepare local governments for the potential of a resurgence. And so we've, in analyzing our current our operations during that time, we've identified some things that I think we could shore up. And the connectivity between the health department and the other networks, going away from the current communication system, site the site connectivity between the departments to a fiber optic approach is one of them that I think would greatly enhance that communication, because I know they have some challenges out there in communicating during this COVID-19. So those are the types of things that we're looking at. And you ask about, do you need help? And so yes, we've been looking at checking with county's auditors on who they might have available and who we might contact. Why do you have somebody in mind?
Well, I don't have anyone in mind, but boy, I can see that being an overwhelming thing. And just this morning, just here in the court here, if they're going to send their cost recovery over to you to handle, I mean, where does the end come? I don't know who all out there are entitled to try to recover costs?
Well, the cost recovery, according to that Spark Act, goes out to the local units of government, and the cost recovery that they're talking about, that are costs incurred directly with combating COVID-19. Does not include loss of revenue.
I understand, but
and things of that nature. So what we do then, and they have they being the city of Kansas, has a very specific process that we have to follow as they submit their requests on state forms. And those came out, as you're aware, last week. If you said that they had a couple of Sparks meetings last week, one on Thursday afternoon and one on Friday morning. So, yeah, we've been trying to keep up with that as well, so.
Just to comment, I've been in a lot of counties lately, but one of them was Seward County last week. I went to Rotary and they have hired a consultant. And I know there's a whole new industry of consultants related to CARES Act money, but the firm they hired had already done the big county contracts, Sedgwick and Johnson County, you know, the 500,000 plus folks. So, and they were talking a lot about projecting a vision for your community and costing on that basis too. So, you know, what do you want to see your community become post COVID? So the task is huge. Is there any consideration to going with a consultant like that?
Sure, absolutely. We can contact them and find out who they used for that.
Yeah, they're very proactive, particularly in Seward County.
Okay.
They have about half the money we have.
Okay.
My observation is back to all that IT discussion we've had. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of roundtable talk. Is that going to be following the CIP process, or where does the commission fall in line to oversee or at least be a part of that discussion?
Well, I think you need to be involved in that. I agree with the approach. I guess if I was aware that we were going off on a discussion on IT instead of budget, I would have done something different. But that being said, I do agree that I think there needs to be more of a concentrated effort on the IT approach and a very
seems like that
open
was
discussion on it as well.
a hot issue. So,
Well, every time we had a increase in the budget, it was IT. So that's where it's going. And
used to be
for years, I haven't seen a cohesive plan between law enforcement and the rest of the county. You know, it's been like this. And so I've always tried to help our administrator. Let's try to get them together. And then we weren't getting anywhere.
Okay, well, and I do agree that needs to be focused on here as well. There's no doubt about that.
well, it's obviously going to be a part of our budget process this year. So, all right. Any further comments?
I have one last question.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Okay. This is for Dory. Where are we, what is a mill levy worth this upcoming year? Is that $875? 800,000?
Virtually the same as it was last year.
So $893 or something like that last year?
No.
Mill.
It was 475 or
400 some thousand.
Yeah,
You're way too high.
just under 500,000.
Okay.
Yeah, just under 500,000.
So,
Assessed valuation was 498 million.
and that's finalized.
Well,
That is your estimate.
That's the July one.
It won't be
All right.
finalized till.
That's what I'm asking, what's the final estimate? Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
I don't really want that thing.
I didn't think we did.
Need to come back to, I'll get rid of this for you.
Is that on and off?
Yep.